Okay, and welcome to episode 109 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Galuzzo. The whole gang is back. Elric Kane, welcome.
I feel like it's been months.
I know. Well, it has, because we've been at conventions and kind of like it's been some people and not others. But we're all here, including Ryan Turek.
Hello.
Hello, and Rebecca McKendry.
I was taking a sip of LaCroix.
And your shirt, Heavy Metal made me do it.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was for somebody
Apropos.
coming tonight. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Holy smokes. I
I
forgot
wore
about
it
that.
with reason. I had
man.
meetings today and I looked all formal and businessy and I changed into this shirt for a reason
That's
tonight.
right. Got in costume, as Elric would put it.
Yep. Uniform.
Yeah. So how's it going, guys?
Doing well.
Busy B.
Heck yeah.
It's good to have everybody in the same room. I know that we've all been scattered.
We were almost in the same room for
and-
Friday 13th Part 3 in 3D, but we
we'll
could
talk
never
about.
see you.
Find Rob.
That's actually a good kickoff to the
Here's
conversation.
what happened.
We were in the same physical space.
It was a Friday.
Yeah.
My coworkers and I at Epic Pictures decided, it's Friday. We all want In-N-Out. Everybody got In-N-Out for lunch. Everyone in my entire staff got sick an hour later, except for me.
Man, In-N-Out's like usually one of the cleaner places.
Exactly. And so I was waiting for something. I was like, when everybody else gets sick and you don't, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
But I'm not missing Friday 3D in 3D.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went to the screening, and I may have held out all power until the very end of the movie because In-N-Out did us wrong this one time.
And that doesn't help that in that movie there's at least 2 sequences where a guy's on a shitter. Like, that does not help when you're feeling sick.
On the shitter and
Does
also
not
not
wipe
wiping.
his hands.
Oh, yeah,
Does
that's
not
right.
wash his hands
No one-
either.
He
No.
buckles up and you're like,
Yeah.
no, don't buckle up. Yeah, that got a groan from
Twice.
It's
Twice.
disgusting.
Yeah.
But it
I'm
was
sorry to hear that,
It
Rob.
was great to see it in 3D.
It's like
Yeah.
seeing a movie you've never seen before.
I know.
Well,
it was really amazing.
And what was fun was because our friend Josh Miller helped host it with Friday Night Frights. And right before, I popped over to say hello before the show started. He was sitting with Larry Zerner, who is one of the stars of the movie, Shelley, if you will.
Also my lawyer.
And a lawyer.
Which is great.
Yes.
He's awesome.
Copyright infringement if you need the help. But he had said to me, and I don't know why, for years, he always gives me shit because Friday 3 is not my favorite. When the rankings happen, he saw me rank it once, and I think I put it somewhere in the middle. And he's like, that's because you haven't seen it in 3D. If you saw it in 3D, it would go higher on your ranking. And so he said it to me before the screening. He's like, I want to know if it goes higher on your ranking. You are correct, sir. It now goes up a whole movie or two.
You know what? Welcome to the club, because I've been explaining this for years. Every time we did a ranking, and 3 would shift up and down for me. Sometimes I'd put it before 4, because honestly, behind Jason from Part 6, Jason from Part 3 is probably my favorite. I like the big lug in Jason Part 3.
I think once he's knocked off the bikers, once they're out of the story, the sequence where he then kills everyone in the house, I think is the best of any of the films in 3D. Like, I actually have seen this one the most of any of them because growing up, but never in 3D. And now I think, like, what the fuck was I watching? Because think about that first 30 minutes. It's pretty tiresome without the gags, because a lot of them are just set up as gags. But the actual murders are really great. And his body language after he kills her with the gun, he just throws it down and kind of shrugs and walks off. It's great. It really sets up a lot. But I thought the death of the guy walking on his hands this, I felt it. Like, I shuddered with the physical reaction to his body being
Huge
destroyed.
applause.
There were so many moments that I was literally waiting for in 3D. Actually, I was sitting there and I had to go to the bathroom so bad because I drank in like one of those like bucket-sized fountain drinks that you get at movie theaters. And I was waiting for the harpoon scene. And I'm literally like, hold it. And then as soon as it happened, I ran. But I did not remember any major 3D gags in the final like murder like set piece, the climactic part, and there weren't any.
Yeah,
and I was a
that's
little
the
shocked.
most disappointing part, except for when he's reaching out his hands, which is fucking rad.
Yeah, that was great.
But like
the money
the
shot.
3D,
The eyeball's
pretty
the last one, I think, for a while.
Yeah, the eyeball, but like
which is
it
great.
pretty much turns
Yo-yo.
off after that. And
Oh,
then,
yo-yo. No,
no,
yo-yo's
the yo-yo's
I mean, the
like
eyeball
earlier
pop.
in.
of her boyfriend.
Yeah,
it's one of
like
the
that's the
last gags you
gag.
get.
And then they kind of stop during the
one,
final, like the final girl sequence, like it's gone. And I was kind of like, man, I would have liked to see some more 3D here.
But the hands and then the axe, because I've never noticed, but when he falls down, the axe out of his head is coming straight at you, and like the handle, and it's like, oh,
good reactions. That's the great thing. It's like there was a great reaction from the audience once his hands came up, and everybody was like, oh.
Well, I mean, that's the most fun kind of screening you could possibly have. I mean, you're going to remember this film so much more fondly now too, just because of that audience participation. So.
And some of the moments, like it's clear to see what the gimmicky things were, like with the harpoon and the eyeball and the
popcorn.
The popcorn.
Oh yeah,
but then like
cool.
I'd never caught the joint before, where you know he hands the joint just slightly to the camera, and it's literally coming to the audience. Or even the opening titles, like I'd never
that's true.
caught
They look
about
really cool.
how cool they would look in 3D.
That was fun because so we get there, the movie starts, but there's no sound, and the opening scene is not in 3D because it's the footage from 2. And so obviously everyone was like groaning, and then they stopped the film, and then they restarted again. So the moment that the first title sequence comes straight at us, you kind of like heard everybody go, ooh.
Yeah.
And it was really cool.
This was worth it.
Yeah.
Is what you
like
felt.
I thought the opening credits were pretty damn cool because it was like this block of text that literally just seemed to be kind of hovering just over your head. And I was like, this is kind of badass.
It's disappointing how few slashers are in 3D because you think of all the horror films, slashers really make the most sense. Like, I wish there was more. I mean, Freddy, you only get what, like the last 30
10 minutes.
And not even in real 3D.
It's not very much, but it's just like, it seems like a perfect avenue for that. So,
well, on the big screen, I was going to say too, the big screen makes Rick, the boyfriend, look like a real fucking dope. Because when you watch it at home, you're kind of like, oh, look at this guy. He's just coming on strong. And on a big screen, it somehow watching it on a 40-foot screen and watching this guy really come on to his girlfriend after having this, obviously, you know, kind of like not a breakup, but a long distance from her. And he's just like, oh, come on. And you're like, dude, slow the fuck down.
I also
every turn he was just like, let's do it. And she's like, I'm not ready yet. And he's like, throwing the worst, like, sappy boyfriend bullshit things at her. And
well,
it's like,
I mean,
dude.
he was clearly like 35 and she was like 18.
I know,
I which I'd never noticed before, but watching it now, Rick. I was like, he's like close to her dad's age now.
I'll also say seeing it on the 40-foot screen brings back my long-running theory of rapey Jason flashback because watching it like this, we all know there's something weird, but then you think about the logistics, like, what the fuck happened? She blacked out and then she's in her
after
room?
seeing him? Yeah.
You're like, what is the story here? It could have taken the mythos in a totally different way with the kind of character he is, but it definitely makes you wonder if maybe there was a father there who took care of Jason, had to put Jason in line, then return her to her bed. Could open up some
Alex reading a lot into this.
It's definitely rapey Jason. I don't care what anyone says. It's rapey Jason.
Jason's dad showed up at the end of Jason Lives, but they never filmed it. It's in the novelization.
What was his name again?
Elias Voorhees. Yeah. And I have to mention, because I was talking to because obviously everyone I was with, we were all talking about Shelley after, because, you know, he just kind of was the star there. And Tracy Savage showed up.
Yes,
which is
she was
nice
awesome.
To see her.
Yeah, she was cool.
But I think it's definitely in the Blu-rays, and it's on the DVDs for Friday the 13th 4 and 5 and 6 maybe. But Dan Farrens, Andrew Cash, all those guys that did Never Sleep Again, they did this epic documentary. It's like a faux documentary called The Crystal Lake Massacres Revisited. And basically it's like one of those not a CNN show, but it's like one of those shows where they interview all these people as if it all happened. And there's all these theories about like Tommy Jarvis went and had reconstructive surgery, which is why he never looked the same, the 3 incidences. Like they actually explain everything. But the greatest part of this series is all the cameos. Like Tom Holland shows up as somebody that went to camp with Jason and said, oh, his mother was so scary, she would always yell at us. But the greatest cameo of all time is Stuart Gordon plays Shelley's dad.
Oh, yeah.
And he shows up and he's like, you know, he was always playing tricks and such a funny guy. And he's like, you know, Shelley was my whole world. And it's just, so I like to imagine Stuart Gordon as the dad of Shelley.
That's
and
funny.
he even gags about how he gave him that hockey mask. He's like, that guy's wearing, that's the mask I gave him. So if you have those discs, I definitely recommend going back to those, because that mockumentary just adds the icing on the cake.
And I know somebody's just made a documentary just on 3. There's a whole documentary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they tried to.
coming
They tried to
no, it's on YouTube.
Oh, it's already out?
I think it's out on YouTube.
I know it's
now.
really recent because they're going to screen it where I work, and the guy asked me and I was like, oh, that's weird that there's another thing on that.
Interesting.
But I think 3 I think the deaths are really cool, and I think it was 3. So much fun.
I like 3. I always wanted to kind of live in the bikers world a little bit more, see a little bit more Foxy.
I like how dangerous they are. One scene, next scene, they're really kind of, they're not at all dangerous.
Oh, they're getting the gasoline, and they're like, nobody's going to get hurt, baby. It's okay. We're all good.
Yeah.
I'm like,
The tone is very strange in that part of the film.
They were going to set the barn on fire. It's probably going to hurt somebody.
Well, they dumped their bike. I mean, that can really fuck up a bike. Of course, he literally picked it up, which seemed kind of unlikely, and then just rode off on it. I mean, like, if you dump a bike, that does not happen. So, yeah.
But three slides up and down for me on in my top 5 Fridays.
Now that I've seen it in 3D, it's up a notch.
But it has to be in 3D. That's the problem.
It has to be in 3D.
Unfortunately, because if I watch it at home, I'm going to be like, it's all right.
And there's no legitimate home 3D release. I don't know why. Paramount just won't do it. And now the 3D format's dead anyway for the most part.
So that DVD I have that came with glasses, what will that look like?
It's the red and blue, and it gives you a giant headache. It doesn't even remotely look like proper 3D.
That's a bummer.
I brought those going, I'm going to watch it in 3D. And then they gave you completely different 3D glasses.
That's right,
that are
the
like,
real deal.
Yeah.
To Mike Williamson getting schooled.
That was amazing.
I had Brian Collins sitting next to me just shouting at him.
Oh, my God.
Is there anamorphic? Yeah,
he wanted to tell the world that the glasses that were the same on both sides and clear, he wanted to say that one side doesn't work, which I was trying the whole time going, he was on Killer POV back in the day.
Yeah, all about film.
Well overdue to not appear on the show.
And I booed him when that happened.
Yeah, no, so did I. We had a lot of fun. But he's a quality human. We just like to make fun of him because he likes Mangler.
Yeah.
That's basically all you need to know.
And Freddie.
He stands up for shitty titles that he believes in, and I have mad props for that. So,
Speaking of not shitty, are we all caught up on Castle Rock?
I have not watched the last episode.
Well, there's one on right now.
4 episodes.
5 after tonight.
Yep.
5
tonight. Then I'm caught up.
I have only watched the 3.
This is the first time we're talking about it. I think
let's talk Castle Rock because that's top of my notes.
Castle Rock is phenomenal. I think it's such a fantastic show. The tone is so pitch perfect, and it lures you. It brings you in with very little information. It just keeps you going. It's what a good TV show should be.
I thought it was going to be more like in-jokey with all this world, so it's totally a new story.
That's what I love about it, because in the first 15 minutes, they set you up, and you're like, oh, shit, Sheriff Pangborn, oh, my God. And you start getting all these, nostalgic memories of seeing Pangborn in Dark Half and Misery. But what it isn't, and this is what I love about Castle Rock, is it isn't a cameo show. It's not all about pointing to all the fucking Easter eggs and the Stephen King universe. It's about telling its own story, its own character arcs, its own emotion, and its own tone. It's just living in Stephen King's universe.
How many episodes is it, though? Because after 3, I thought was phenomenal. Like episode 3, I was like so in. And then 4, I felt like, it felt like it went backwards with the movement a little.
4 is really heavy. It's really detail
then I have
heavy.
Seen 4. Okay, I did watch it.
I mean, it's
but is it 8 or 10 or 12? Like how many episodes are?
Yeah.
Because that's my only concern is that where it's going to go in that amount of time.
Yeah, I'll reckon.
If it's a one-off series, right? Each season's going to be its own story. They just announced that. They said each one will be a different. It might have similar characters, but each one's going to be a self-contained storyline.
Have you heard that?
I
have
10.
not.
Yeah,
but I did hear if it's only 10 episodes. And Elric and I had this conversation while we were waiting for them to restart the film at Friday on 3 on Friday. But yeah, that was my concern. Is if the really complicated heavy one is 4. I have seen all of them. Then by the end of 4, I was still like, I feel like this needs to be going somewhere more. Like, I want the vehicle. We've set up a lot of shit about this vehicle, but I want the car to actually start moving a little bit faster.
The motor is strong. I think to bring in the car out.
We're going to ride this car for all it's worth.
I think
the Plymouth is loaded. It's not on fire yet.
I mean, you've got Skarsgård. You've got Skarsgård.
He's great, by the way. I'm really intrigued.
Quote unquote, maybe wrongfully imprisoned guy. I mean, I'm really curious to see where that goes. I think Melanie Linsky is fantastic.
Yeah, she's great casting.
And who they cast for the little girl is so pitch perfect. But I want to know more about her. I just love living with these characters.
I am loving this universe and all the characters, but that's what I feel like so far. Is it's like it's very kind of Twin Peaks in that regard, where we've set up like 10 different sectors of characters, 10 different little facets of this town that all have different weird shit going on. I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, well, we're now technically about halfway through. I want to know how they connect and where it's heading.
Mm-hmm. And I love the casting of Sissy Spacek. That just really feels good. It feels right.
Having
her in the world. It's not Scott Glenn, but just Sissy because of Carrie. It just feels like
May my inclinations towards that may just be coming off 4, because 4 was literally just like hurling information at you the whole time, and I was just like, I don't know what any of this is.
Yeah, it's really dense. It's really dense
Yeah.
storytelling, and I want to go back because I know that I missed a bunch of details, only because when they mentioned, I'm going to mispronounce the name, Desjardins, the last name, I was like, oh my God, that's the coach from Carrie. But then I started thinking about where else have I heard that name? And I read a think piece later on. It was like they're roping in a side character from Stand By Me.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. The problem with my nerd brain is that I'm automatically trying to put the pieces together when I should just live in the universe and not worry about the connections to the canon that we know of.
Those are there just as fun Easter eggs, not as anything to do with the story. Because I read that thing. It's one of the characters is like one of Kiefer Sutherland's gang from Stand By Me. It's him grown up.
Yeah.
One of those gang.
This is when an article will be helpful, where somebody points out everything.
I want a chart here. And I do have to say, I was so happy that they kept Terry O'Quinn in various capacities.
That was a great way to open and then keep him alive in a sense.
Literally, I was watching the show on the first night, and they literally, within the first 10 minutes, he kills himself. That's not a spoiler. It happens in the first 10 minutes. And immediately I was like, you can't have Terry O'Quinn in something and kill him in the first 10 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to get on Twitter and bitch. And as soon as I logged into Twitter, Luke Petrowski was posting something. Yeah. And then him and I got in a big conversation about it.
You don't cast Terry O'Quinn and just kill him off in the first 10 minutes.
That's what I was like, you can't do that. That's not cool.
If we're going to give a shout out to Luke, I actually wrote down his tweet because I actually agree a little bit, but I think I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it on the level you guys are. But I could also see what somebody would think. And this is what Luke wrote about Stephen. He said, typically
writer of Super Dark Times.
Yes, and he's been on our show. Typically, Stephen King spins yarns, not mysteries. The appeal of his stories for me is that they make me lean in and ask what happens next, as opposed to what is happening. And I thought that was kind of apt a little bit, but let's wait to see where it goes. Because I think that's coming from some of the concern of what Lost delivered. Because Lost was incredibly intriguing the whole way and then just totally shit the bed to me. That was something I was totally into and just completely glued to. And there was just something about, I think this has more to work from.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that
let's see.
What Lost suffered from was kind of the idea that it was renewed each season and that it had to keep going. And that, it's making money right now, so go figure out how we're going to have season 8. Sure. I don't think if they have said, okay, 10 episodes, we can do 10 episodes really strong, let's cap at that. I hope that we won't have that kind of shit the bed ending.
Well, I was going to say, I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and I apologize I completely forgot who it was that brought this up, but it's interesting that we are now so far along in Stephen King's career and his body of work that much like Lovecraft and Poe, we can actually set things in his world. Original
and yet we don't have a word
characters.
for that, like Kingian. There's nothing.
There is nothing. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's the Kingiverse.
It's just because King is still going so fucking strong.
Yeah, he's still top of the
like the Marvel verse of the DC.
Yeah, we need to come up with a good king.
Yeah,
King
there's got to be
Kingsian.
Yeah,
Kingsian.
Kingsian. That's right.
Kingston.
Yeah.
Well, I love that King is a big fan. He's been tweeting about the show, and he's like, and I could say this because I didn't write it.
Yeah. And it's got to be fun for him because it is the flavor of his world with that. Though I want to see a Needful Things shop. There's a few things you just want to see in it.
There is a nod.
There's a nod? Okay.
There is a nod.
Alan Pangborn, played by Scott Glenn, is in The Dark Half. It's Michael Rooker, and he's Ed Harris's character in Needful Things.
Yes, and then he was another character in Misery too.
Yes,
I think.
But not in the movie. I think just in the book.
Is it just in the book?
But I just want the store. I want somebody to walk by the store so it's in the background, and because that could be a show of its own.
But that's got to be a trip for King to have this character that's existed in 2 or 3 books, and then here's a show you're watching every week, and there he is as an old man played by Scott Glenn.
Yeah. Who's probably lived all those adventures.
Yeah.
And that's why he has a real we're not going to get into the story too much, but I like how he has a real opinion about that prisoner, about what to do. But it's also cool to have the monster from It in this movie as it does make for an interesting through line.
Let me pick up on that, because of course part of you is like, is he like Pennywise maybe, or some sort of other form or whatever? It made me go revisit It, which I haven't seen since theaters. And I loved it when I saw it initially. And then after the second time seeing it, I went back and revisited the book and the TV movie and ended up saying that I prefer those to as an adaptation of the story. But since I've had a chunk of time, and now that we have Castle Rock, I got to revisit the It movie, both with a little bit of time, but also the knowledge of the adult actors playing them now. Mm-hmm. So there was something interesting about knowing just a little bit about what's coming. And I was able to enjoy it just as much as I'd done on the first time, because I think my beef was after I thought about it a while, I was like, oh, but it's not very faithful. They're doing this or whatever. It really is its own thing. And it's very rare that you can adapt a piece of work, make it completely its own thing, and yet totally feel that it's captured what that original thing was.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? Like, I just have so many things embedded in my head of Tim Curry, like the way they fight it in the original, that it's so hard to separate that. It's like seeing a remake, basically, even though this wasn't a remake. And so seeing this version of it, and in particular when they fight it at the end, and the way that it's completely different from the book and the TV movie, and knowing like Bill is going to be what's his name, the split guy.
Oh yeah.
McAvoy.
McAvoy, and Bill Hader is
You're
Richie.
starting to see who they
like
are.
now that like seeing that fight and knowing what the adult versions are going to be, it makes me. And then it says, chapter 1 at the end of that. Now I'm like so pumped. So it's pretty solid. I think in the long run, it's going to be considered one of his best, if not the most faithful.
I think it's going to come down to what part 2 is. If part 2 is awesome, then we're going to see them as this amazing piece of work.
In the way that they changed 1 to kind of fit the narrative of feature, I think changing 2 will be a giant benefit.
Yeah,
because 2 is not strong, but I think they have a unique opportunity, and that's probably why things are the way they are in 1.
Yeah,
is because they're setting up a much stronger chapter 2 than what we got. So I'm pumped for it. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, Castle Rock, if you haven't jumped on that, you absolutely should, because it definitely has the potential, 4 episodes in, to be one of the great shows. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's on Hulu now. You could see new episodes every Wednesday.
All right, what else you got?
Guys, can I just throw in and say that I watched Doom Asylum?
Oof.
And I just want to say...
Caught up to me and Elric.
And I just want to say...
I have not seen this yet.
Becca, you're going to love it.
I am. Okay.
I am a big fan of Doom Asylum.
Off-air review, I was not into it, because neither of
that
them...
and Microwave Massacre are for me my low points of the year.
Get the fuck out of here. This is Bloodhook, baby. Bloodhook.
Seriously, what I took from Kane's review was
Dave Parker's
life's
so
short,
mad about Bloodhook
and I don't
reviews.
have time for Doom Asylum.
No, you need to see this. Doom Asylum.
Give her the copy that I gave you, and now you can keep passing it around.
You know what? I'll take 2.
Okay.
I'll take 2 to put on my shelf.
I actually got a copy, and based off the prior reviews, I gave it away at Trivia Night last week.
But Ryan, I voted for Reagan.
I love it. I love it so much. It's so silly. Basically, guys, if you missed Robin Elrich's recap,
if you've missed the last month of the show,
it's basically about this dude and his lady who are just driving along the road, and then they get into a car accident, and then the guy comes back while on he's thought to be dead, and then he's in a morgue, and they literally peeled off his face, and they're performing a autopsy on him.
Wait, what? Why did they peel off his face?
Well, it's part of the autopsy. Don't ask, Becca.
Doesn't make
Don't
sense.
ask questions.
he also wasn't burnt at all in the accident.
No.
Afterwards,
He's completely messed up.
Face.
Yeah. He's completely he's walking around and he's fine, but he's dead. And then he comes back from the dead in the morgue.
Face back?
No.
Okay.
Stop with the details.
So, cut to many, many, many years later, and a bunch of kids are going to go hang out in this abandoned asylum, and this dude without a face is still lurking around there, killing people. And meanwhile,
and it's Frankenhooker, by the way.
Frankenhooker, yeah.
And she's in both. The flashback and the
So there's a Dune Asylum verse.
Yeah,
there is. It's all like New York horror universe kind of thing. But then while these kids are out partying at the asylum getting picked off by this faceless man, there is a group of rocker chicks that I can only call the Misfits from Gem and the Holograms. Yeah. And they are the best. They are the best, Elric.
They were the worst.
Tina is MVP of this fucking film, man.
You mean the characters are the best, because whatever noise they're making does not...
Oh my God.
I want to see what Josh Miller...
amazing.
And they're playing instruments, but it's not music that would be played by instruments. And Josh Miller's like, they're not playing those instruments.
It's just sound. It's just loud screaming. Sarah's like, oh, they're in a punk band. I'm like... What?
I don't know about that.
But anyways, the punk chicks, whatever they are, clash with the nice kids, whatever. And then meanwhile, you've got this killer running around. But
one of them falls in love with one of the nice kids. You can't pass over that.
Complete
every time they see
fantasies,
each other.
Complete with fantasies of them running through a grassy field. A grassy field running from distant parts to each other.
Is the faceless man there?
No, he's not. But he delivers these one-liners that are so.
Wait, he talks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he does.
Before he kills, he gets a one-liner, and then the victims get one-liners,
guys,
which is too much for me.
Were his vocal cords burnt to like at least give it like a gravelly growl? Or?
Becca, you are banned from the. This is like Big Lebowski.
This is not how you.
You're shut the fuck up, Donnie territory.
This is not how you discuss Doom Asylum.
Okay.
I found
this is a serious movie, Becca.
I found it charming and goofy, and it's like one of those movies when you're a kid and you're just making a goofy horror movie, and you all think it's the funniest fucking thing in the world, and then you show it to your family and your friends, and you're like, okay, thank you. That's how I kind of felt like Doom Asylum was made, where they're like, they all thought it was funny, and the only person who also thought it was funny was me.
You.
Yes.
So Becca needs to see this so we can find out. This will never be Shockwave approved.
It'll never be Shockwave approved.
No. And according to the IMDb, which is always reliable, the coroner is almost identical to Freddy Krueger.
Ooh.
Which is so far off.
Doom Asylum verse.
Almost identical.
Not even in the
identical, Ryan.
Only the fact that he gets one-liners. That's about it.
It's all very, very tongue-in-cheek. Kristen Davis from Sex and the City is in it.
Why are you pointing at me? I've never even seen that show.
All right, never mind. Hang on. I'm going to go the other direction.
Sell it to you.
Elric,
I've never
seen every episode of that series. So and actually had a big crush on her. So you're talking to the right person.
Well, she looks really good in this one.
But she wears retarded bathing suits. They're so weird. The one piece she's wearing.
Yo,
is so
those
strange.
babies. Yes, that bathing suit is
so
amazing.
bizarre. I think
That
it's
is so
totally bizarre.
80s with the high cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 80s girls.
80s high cut.
Love it.
So much
Love
bikini
it.
shaving.
Anyways, it's charming. It's
you just
goofy.
wrote that for me.
And
and exactly like Freddy Krueger.
Identical.
Actually, more like Frank from Hellraiser. Look at that.
I would have gone more Leatherface, but I'm seeing it at an angle.
Becca, you're out of your lane, Becca.
And look, and if you must see this movie, as Ryan advises, or not,
I think we are.
but if you must see it, I have to clarify: watch the full screen version.
Yes.
Because they give you two versions on here. I try to watch the widescreen, but the widescreen literally just stretches it and cuts people's heads off.
Yes.
So this was meant to be a full screen movie
with the boom mic popping in every once in a while.
It's totally fun.
Oh, it's totally fun though. I think it's silly and charming and goofy and low budget.
Right.
I mean, like it's an era of horror that doesn't get not represented anymore.
I am curious because neither Rob or I don't think had even seen the cover or heard of it prior.
Never heard of it.
So this is one of those ones totally on the radar. Was that something you had even heard of when you were young?
I'd never heard of this movie.
Okay, so that's rare that none of us had even heard of it.
I bought a sight unseen.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That was exciting.
Okay, well, I'm going to need to borrow
ahead.
somebody's copy because I gave mine away based on an Elric review. So I will follow.
As if you should trust me. I mean, come on.
I trust you. I will not be watching Microwave Massacre anytime soon. So I'm going to follow this up with something that was equally fun and kind of just a product of its time that could never be made again. And this is Stunt Rock. I had actually watched this in prep.
Brian Trenchard Smith, the Aussie.
Brian Trenchard Smith.
He's
and
awesome.
it's pretty much like a love letter to Australian filmmaking. But I had just literally started researching best heavy metal films. And this came up, and I'm going to talk about it at the front because it's not like part of the horror heavy metal oeuvre, but it's definitely something that will still appeal to our audience. So this was part of like the stunt exploitation, very small subgenre that came out in the late 70s. The most famous one being Stunt Man. And so what this was Film Ventures International, who like as soon as you say their name, I giggle a little bit. But the producer had this concept that if you were to mix this awesome heavy metal band and stunts that like teenagers' heads would somehow explode and it would be the best film ever made.
Yeah.
Totally. And so that was his concept. And he found this stunt man out of Australia who had done like every Australian film ever made and was really famous. Grant Page. And what he was most well known for was Mad Dog Morgan, which there is like a 20-minute love letter to the making of Mad Dog
Dennis
Morgan.
Hopper was legally dead for a period of that movie.
Yes.
And he was so drunk. This is the one where where he told us that he was so drunk driving his mom to the airport that he was just drunk off his ass, and the director's mom got in the car, and we were like, oh, that's frightening.
Well, like in the middle of Stunt Rock,
classic.
there's about a 20-minute love letter to all of the stunts in Mad Dog Morgan. So
weird, right in the middle of the film.
Right in the middle. Well, it's Grant Page did all the stunts, and then it's like this flashback where he's like, and I remember shooting Mad Dog Morgan, and then it's like a documentary on Mad Dog Morgan.
That's in the movie?
It's in the movie. Yeah,
That's bizarre. I think George Lazenby, the guy who was Bond once, maybe is in this, because I remember a story that Brian Trenchard Smith, back on my first show, This Week in Horror, we had Brian Trenchard Smith, and he talked about how he had to convince him to set himself on fire or something.
Yeah, that would be this one.
And then he punched the director out
So,
afterwards.
No,
literally.
Is that a different one?
Yeah, no, because you know what you're thinking? You're mixing up a lot of these stories from the Australian doc, not quite Hollywood.
Yeah, but that's
yeah.
Brian Trenchard Smith. It's one of his, and I think it was
So this one actually has some type of small plot, and there is like a very small plot by which they structure these stunts around, and I'm struggled to call a lot of these stunts. It's much more kind of like shit we would now see on YouTube, where you're like, why are you doing that, dumbass? And this is a grown ass man doing it. So fun. And so the whole concept of it is that he's like this celebrity, like people cheering wherever he goes level stunt man in Australia. And then he gets an invite by the well-known U.S. band Sorcery. Sorcery? Yeah, it's Sorcery.
A real band?
This is a real band.
Oh.
So the producer wanted Foreigner, but Foreigner was on tour at the time, so he settled for Sorcery.
Okay.
And so the stunt guy gets an invite from the band Sorcery to come incorporate stunts into their stage shows. Now, that never really happens. He just kind of comes, does a whole bunch of stunts during the day, and then hangs out with the band and goes to their concerts.
So it's
at
not
night.
a fiction film. It's a
No,
mixture of
this is a fiction
concert
film.
and documentary. No,
It's kind of both, because it's documenting. Grant Page is playing himself, and
Okay.
he is going through all of the stunts he's done, and he's describing things, and he's dating like 3 different women at the same time while he's in LA. I can't even keep up because they're all blonde. And so he's dating all of these different women. Or some of them are friends. I don't know. He's hanging out with them. And he's telling every single time he sits down with somebody, a flashback is about to happen of some awesome stunt he's done in his career. And then afterwards, they're going to go to the Sorcery stage show. Now, the Sorcery stage shows are always a wizard and a devil doing crazy magic tricks on stage, while Sorcery, which is kind of like this U.S. version of Led Zeppelin, it's that same kind of like high-pitchy, almost Tolkien-ish mythos stuff, happens on stage. The whole thing is just batshit crazy, guys. You need to watch
sounds like
this.
a hard film to explain.
It really does. It really is.
It doesn't sound like an easy soundbite.
So Brian Trenchard Smith called this his worst film ever made.
yeah.
Quentin
Wow.
Tarantino loves it.
What
So
Tarantino
there
does.
you go.
To tell you, because Jack Hill is obviously one of Tarantino's favorite directors, but Brian Trenchard Smith is one of his others, and he
Yes.
talks about him at length in the Ozploitation doc.
Right. And
yeah.
I'll loop it in for you. So the movie you're thinking with George Lazenby
Yeah.
is actually called The Man from Hong Kong.
Directed by Brian Trenchard.
Who also directed it. Umbrella, who I think is the Australian company that does
Yeah,
all
they
region
put out on it,
Blu-rays. So they put out a
and they
Blu-ray.
listen to the show, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
I hear from Simon Sherry a lot, who is the guy who puts out all the...
Well, I need to pick up this disc because they put out The Man from Hong Kong on Blu-ray, which comes with, as a bonus feature, 5 additional films from Brian Trenchard Smith,
cool.
including Stunt Rock.
Well, I
So
watched
it's on that
it.
disc.
He made Turkey Shoot, which is awesome.
He
Yes,
did,
love
and he
Turkey
also made Dead End Drive-In and BMX Bandits and Leprechaun 3 and 4.
Yeah. And he
So
lives here.
just-
He lives here now, and he's a super lovely, funny guy.
I think I need him on to talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, he would actually be great on this. I haven't seen him since we did that show like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Wow.
Well, and the guy who is the drummer in the band Sorcery, again, a real band, when I posted up about it on Facebook last night, someone tagged him. He's now like one of the main studio music producers for Universal. So I was like, that's
cool.
awesome. So yeah, Stunt Rock. I watched it on Amazon Prime. It is the pan and scanned one, so it's not the best quality, but it's still worth it, and you'll still have a blast with it. Stunt Rock.
Stunt Rock.
Cool.
Right on.
And you could tell, watching this now, and having seen a lot of the other stuntsploitation movies, Death Proof makes so much more sense if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
kind of really
Yeah.
up on
Oh,
this.
for sure.
He loves
subgenre.
Australian car chase
Yeah.
movies because they seem dangerous.
Yeah.
Because they were, you know. Yeah, I saw a couple new American indies.
All right.
One that I think a couple of you have seen called, what the very original title, Dead Night, which used to be called Apple Cart, which I think is a much more interesting title. This is interesting. You know, it's interesting. This is getting a lot of love online, and a lot of I'm seeing. It's kind of nice to see that, like, a lot of young people, like, I mean, 19, 20-year-olds are like tweeting about it and saying how this is like a new monster, and that is really cool. I unfortunately have to report that it didn't work for me at all, and I'm bummed by that because I love everyone involved.
Yeah.
AJ's Bowen, Brea Grant, everyone's in it.
Barbara Crampton.
Barbara Crampton. I think the things that really stand out for me, I think the location shooting is really excellent. Like, it's really exciting to see somebody shooting in the snow. I think it's at Lake Tahoe or somewhere. And I think the creature stuff is really well done. sometimes there's just this thing that can pull you out of an experience of a movie, and for me, it's the structure of the film. And it was something I couldn't get around.
You need to tell me what the structure is, because here's the thing: there were two completely different versions of this movie. I saw both of those versions. I tried really hard to get this movie for my label, and it didn't work out at the last minute. But I think
a South by One started with the doc at the start.
All at the start?
That's what I've heard played at South by, but this is not this version. This version starts, just with the reality of watching a narrative story,
the documentary stuff,
and about 30 minutes suddenly it pops in. And my issue is a tonal one, and for me. But I also don't want to be too hard on it because it's interesting, and seeing people respond to it that way is exciting because it's got some really cool horror sequences. But for me, the true crime stuff is done in such an overly farcical way that it completely removes me from the reality of the movie, which is treated in a very realistic way. Anyway, the story that family's going to kind of a remote location. It's implied that maybe something's wrong with the father, who's played by A.J. Bowen. He might be sick, and there's I hate criticizing things like this, but AJ and Bria as a married couple with 18 and 20-year-old kids, I just couldn't do it, and I instantly I'm sorry, Bria, you look far too young.
Was she
for that.
8 when she gave birth?
Well, no, I mean it is by numerically maybe it's possible if somebody was a teenager, but there's just something about them being so youthful that some things are just film is still often a realistic medium, and so when I see little things like that, I just can't get back in. But let's
get Bria and her 18-year-old kids over here right
now. If they'd been 8 or 10, it would have. But 18, 20, the kids in the first year of college, and it's So for me, that was a hard one to get over. But even so, I think it was more the structure of it, because every time in the movie's happening, what I consider the movie, which is the story with the creatures and these kind of interesting wood witch characters, and there's an interesting mythos to this for sure, I would find myself getting lost in it, and then it would bang, hit me with this true crime doc, which is so it's just kind of cheesy to me that I can't then get back in the movie, which is a shame because I think it had a lot of elements that I think were really interesting, especially some of the design and the setup and the actual myth. It's rare that we get horror films going for something like, a Pumpkinhead type mythos. This has that. It has an interesting, I don't want to spoil it because, it's available on all streaming things right now. And I've got to say, I wouldn't just listen to me because I've seen a lot of positive less from critics. It seems like critics were probably more where I'm kind of landing, but people who are just watching this movie seem to really be enjoying it. And it could be because we don't get a lot of horror films that are just hey, bad stuff happening to people and crazy monster. And so it's fun in that sense. Yeah,
I kind of liked it because it was so weird and different and had these two different tones happening. I liked all the funny stuff with the documentary.
It's on its own. It's almost but the two things are so different. The two tones. Yeah. The other one's not funny at all. There's no comic at all. There's no light touch to the main element of the movie, and then those parts are just light touch. And so when they kind of clash to me, and maybe there would have been a way to place them either side, but again, there's something about it though. I was impressed by kind of the way it's shot. Yeah. There's a lot of things about it that I was oh, this is really interesting, especially the location. It's really, any snowbound horror gets my attention.
Yeah.
But it was more just I couldn't completely believe it. That was my issue with that.
Dead Night or Apple Cart.
Finally, one of the rare cases where the title's been changed to put you lower on the search. You had Apple Cart and you went for a D? Come on. Yeah. But I think Apple Cart's a really interesting title. It makes me wonder about the movie, whereas Dead Night just makes me go, it's so many movies.
Yeah, and why would you go Dead Night? Because that's I could name 4 other movies.
Dead of Night. Yeah. There's a lot of. But anyway, it's an interesting movie. I think people who listen to this, there'll probably be a lot of people who like it a lot.
Yeah. Cool. I want to check out the final version. So, Scream Factory, Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
I have seen so much love for this movie this week.
The Wiederhorn.
Yeah, it's kind of, oh man. You should see the special
He's the patron saint of our show, by the way.
God, yeah. I don't know if he'd care about the show.
Yeah.
But I liked this movie as a kid and then grew to not like it at all. Because the original Return of the Living Dead is just such a freaking masterpiece that I just never bothered revisiting 2. And then for a long time, it was always on video or DVD without the original music. And so I was I don't want to see that again. But this is my first time revisiting it. And I just needed a goofy, don't want to think too hard, fun background movie. And so I put this on and I enjoyed it more than I ever had. And it made me realize a lot of things. Because first of all, this goes straight for comedy. It's not even remotely like the first one. Second one, I forgot that it wasn't people critique like reusing the footage for Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 in 1, but I remember this was my case for like, well, Evil Dead 2 is just Evil Dead 1 again. And it's like Return of the Living Dead 2 is just Return of the Living Dead 1 again with the same guys doing the same thing. I forgot that there was that trend where they were just like, hey, let's just like remake the first movie with the second one and see what happens. But no, I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I think the gags are really interesting. All the bonus features talking about the making of this, including the interviews with Ken Wiederhorn, who doesn't like horror at all, basically. And he's like, I don't care about horror, so I was just going to go for comedy. And hearing things like who are the people that came back? James Cameron and Tom Matthews, who's just like, I don't know why he wanted to take it all like that way. Like they basically came back to work with each other because they thought it'd be fun. And apparently they asked other cast members, but it just didn't work out. It was just those two. But
how cool would it be? Because you know how it starts.
They're the heart and soul.
Yeah, you know how it starts with kids discovering it.
Yeah,
how cool would it be if this was like the start of Stranger Things, and another season where they just discover the Return of the Living Dead chemicals? That would be so much fun.
I think it'd be amazing.
I think we have a new crossover on our hands, guys.
And I will. And the best positive. I love. Let me look her. Suzanne Snyder, who was in Weird Science. She's in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. She's Tom Matthews' girlfriend in this, and she has the most hilarious scene, which basically I didn't get it as a kid, but it kind of plays a little creepy as an adult, where he's just like, he's like, let me just eat your brain.
Yeah.
Like,
and she finally goes, okay, just do it.
Yeah, like it's like peer pressuring her into, it's just like,
funny.
oh, that's kind of funny, I guess. And there's obviously a thriller zombie and stuff. Even like the resurrection of the zombies has always been one of my favorite images in zombie cinema in general. And the way they do it in the original movie and in things like Thriller is just like some incredible stuff. In this one, literally somebody gets up and somebody, another zombie steps on their hand or they fall back in. It's all really stupid.
Yeah. So wasn't there like a bully zombie? There's like a bully.
Yeah. The kid is the bully,
and
then he comes back again, and he ends up eating his mom's head. It's just really goofy.
I haven't seen it in forever. To me, it was
super hard to see. That was always a really hard one to track down.
And with the original music, but this disc is really fun. And what it reminded me of was I was terrified. I know the first one's a comedy in parts, but it terrified me. I was so scared of the original movie. I was so scared of zombies. This one helped make me not as scared. So if I could say anything about Return of the Living Dead 2, it kind of bridged that young teenage Rob G into being like, all right, this isn't so bad if you make fun of it. So Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Nice.
So I watched Rampage, which Ryan had talked about a couple of weeks ago.
And you cried, apparently? I saw your Twitter twice.
There's two really touching scenes in it. There are. Ryan, you can... Did you find them touching? Well, I mean, the ending obviously is kind of a heartstring. But again, when he's watching...
Any animal violence upsets me.
When they've got the machetes and he's watching his mom. That one too. I was like, upsetting. I'm really upset here. So
but Becca, wasn't that awesome when the giant crocodile thing walked up the side of the building and then walked through the building?
It was so bad. No, I love the giant crocodile thing.
Monster
and my
nerd.
favorite thing was because they never there are nods to the video game. Like they obviously changed the plot a good bit because even
from the video game.
I know the video game did have a set plot,
really?
But maybe just for me because I played it so much where I could remember it. Where there was set ways that each of the people had come in contact with toxic waste. And they were all mutated from humans. And they would do when you started playing the game, these newspapers would come up that told you, kind of how everybody got mutated. And then you would just start. But even some of the things about the video game, you could reach into the buildings and if you punched 3 times, you'd punch a hole in it. And then you could reach in and grab somebody and put them in your mouth. And there's a scene where George does that. And there's even a part where it's coming out of the Izzy is because they never actually call it Izzy is coming out of the water. And somebody goes, "What is he?" And it was I get it. This was it was such a fun big budget popcorn movie. Don't discount it because I was not going to see it because I was like, oh, they're remaking my childhood game and it's got The Rock in it. How could they do this? I actually really like The Rock.
Me too.
And I mean, not just I love Moana Rock, but I like this Rock too.
But the thing about this Rock in this film is that he's not a Rock that wants to date.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a love interest.
No.
He's just the Rock. He's got his dog. He goes, you know what? I love animals.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, I just want to stay.
He was like special ops taking down poachers. And if you got to be badass, that's where you're badass right there.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, I made a giant bowl of popcorn and I giggled and cried and cheered, and they eat people alive, and it's shock. I was not expecting it to be as violent as it is.
Yeah.
So, and then when he said the weirdos on the internet named it Ralph, I'm like, yes, they fucking did. And that was it.
It's good.
So,
it's good stuff.
It's good.
I was at Fantasia long before we all just kind of broke up and started doing other things. There's one title that I do want to talk about. It's called The Witch in the Window.
You also missed the time I talked about Luz. And I saw your tweet that you had liked it too.
I really
it's interesting.
It's
a really intriguing movie, right?
Very intriguing movie. It's there's a great concept in there, even if the entire execution is a little artsy.
Yeah.
But I really love this kind of fresh way into a possession story.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, it had me hooked the entire time.
Totally. It casts a spell, that's for sure.
Yeah. Witch in the Window is directed by Andy Mitten. I just want to make sure I pronounce his last name correct.
Andy Mitten.
He was part of the team that did Yellow Brick Road.
Oh, yeah.
I rather enjoyed that movie, and I remember it getting a lot of flack when it came out.
It was a bloody disgusting
It's interesting. Yeah. And then he was part of We
Yeah.
Go On, which had been picked up by Shudder. Witch in the Window is a really, really interesting film that is kind of, it's a little bit of an essay on, you think it's about the kid, but it's really about the father, and it's about this kid who had done something wrong at home, and his mother, who was obviously split from his dad, was like, you know what? You're going to go with dad for a little while. And dad's like, oh, shit, I just bought a new house. I'm going to fix it up, but you could spend the summer with me, and we'll go do this thing together. And you get the sense that dad is always running from something. And their split was just because of something that was dad's decision, and he's always buying and fixing up houses and flipping houses. So there's like this kind of sense of non-committal. He never settles down. And so when he gets into this new house, his son's there. One of the neighbors is like, who owned that house? And they're like, no. And he's like, this woman, she's really kind of fucked up. We thought she was a witch. Her husband and child had been involved in a major accident, like a farming accident. She said it was an accident, but we all knew it was kind of her in some way. And she would sit in this picture window on the second floor and just look out to people, and just everybody got creeped out by her. And then one day they were like, wait a minute, she hasn't moved from that spot. We better check on her. And they go up and check on her, and she died. And soon enough, after that story is told, this woman who lived in the house, her presence starts to make herself known. She starts to, there's two really, really great scary moments in this film. One involving a little boy, one involving the father, and involving this witch. And they both got to me. It's a real slow burn. It's incredibly artsy, but there's a nice little wrap up at the end that is very sentimental, very emotional, and it works really well. So even though I had pacing issues with it, I think it's a very strong supernatural thriller. And, it's also part drama as well. But
is that going to be like a festival film, you think, or is it going to?
I think it'll probably go festivals. Yeah,
it might be a while.
Yeah. But if once, just flag it. Witch in the Window, something you guys should check out. As far as like kind of Andy Mitten's career path is going, I was not the biggest fan of Yellow Brick Road. I felt that was very scattered and almost kitchen sinky.
I liked it more than We Go On.
Well, We Go On had a really great idea.
There was one great sequence. The sequence when they actually go, and there was like that big like, and then it didn't go anywhere from there.
Yeah. And I had performance issues with some of the folks in the cast, but I love the concept of it. It's demonstrated, it's definitely, The Witch in the Window is definitely demonstrating that this filmmaker is growing. Nice. He's really latching onto really strong ideas. He's not dismissing that, he should favor concept over character. Character is just as strong as concept in this film. And the execution, the scares are really, really well done and well orchestrated. So I thought it was excellent.
I enjoyed Yellow Brick Road up until the end.
There's a part in Yellow Brick Road where someone literally walks up to somebody. Like it's two people fighting out in the woods, and it's being observed by another character. And we see from this other character's POV these two characters in the distance duking it out, and then someone just reaches over and plucks off a leg. And I was like, "Wait a minute, what?"
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
segment.
there's a moment where like they kind of plucked the leg off, and I was like, "What is this?"
I was bothered by the ending because it's this great journey, and I don't remember the leg scene. And then literally they, in the end, he arrives at the town and then goes into the movie theater and sits down. And you're like, this is it. This is the denouement. Whatever's happened is the meaning of the film. Yeah. And it was very poorly digital and not a very powerful
Well, Yellow Brick Road also had that element of it's basically characters getting lost in the woods for an hour and a half.
It had a cool
there's
premise.
Music playing over every scene. Not like soundtrack. But actual music that the characters can hear,
and it's driving them nuts.
It's driving them mad, but it also drives the audience mad. I started getting a headache watching the movie because I was just like, "Turn the fucking music off," you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Witch in the Window.
Cool.
All right. Speaking of slow burn dramas, the other new indie horror that I saw was Our House. Directed by Anthony Scott Burns of Father's Day and Pilot Priest fame.
Wow.
This film had zero marketing behind it. I think Dick, I thought it was you actually, but it must have been Dick. Rob, I thought it was you for a second. It must have been Dick who wrote to me saying, "Oh my God," because he knows how much I love the short Father's Day and all of the Pilot Priest music.
Yeah.
And so it's just weird to suddenly see, and the image of the cover is really cool. It has like this demon-looking ghost and the title, and it's just strange to have heard absolutely nothing about this movie. Upon researching it, it is actually a remake of a 2010 micro-feature that was American. This is a Canadian production. And so I guess this movie was made on a micro, like, primer kind of budget. It kind of looks like primer because it's got a sci-fi element to it. And I guess somebody got the rights in Canada and they remade it, which is interesting because it's just, that seems like a fast
Wait, what
turnaround.
was the difference between the micro budget and the current one?
I mean, this one's a normal big production. This is a glossy big remake.
It's like Lights Out, where they took the concept of the short film and they just turned it into a feature.
Well, I don't think it was a no, I think it was a feature that it remade.
Oh, really?
I think it's
remade
a
a micro-budget feature.
from 2010
I misread
with
it.
so
a
only
different
like
title.
a 7-year turnaround?
Yeah, it was just interesting, and because when the credits were coming up, it said based on the film XY. It had a different title.
Based on the motion picture, Ghost from the Machine.
And then I looked that up, but I haven't seen the micro feature. Anyway, it's I think it's a really interesting premise. It's like a sci-fi idea. There's this young guy who is creating a science project for a university, and it basically spins, and it's meant to, they're hoping it will be Wi-Fi electricity. And so he's got a light bulb, and he's thinking it'll spin around, and suddenly it will power electricity. And what he doesn't realize is that actually what it's doing is kind of giving energy to dormant things from another dimension, possibly the dead, possibly your loved ones. That's part of the hook of not exactly knowing what it's doing. And it opens with this family, and he's going back to college. And because he goes back to college, he's not there to give his sister a ride home, and the parents die. And so then he leaves college and moves back in with his teenage brother and really young daughter, which is I really like this up. I think all the character dynamics of this movie work really well. The characters are fun to watch. The sci-fi element's fun. The horror just comes a little too late in the piece for it to completely work as a horror film. I think he's definitely one of those directors to watch because I think his style is right on the money. And I really I like slow burn, so I found the whole thing interesting, but it definitely felt more like you get to the end and then it's all just happens very quick in terms of the horror side of this movie. Interesting looking demons. And the only other thing I'd say, it kind of, the last 20 minutes is very reminiscent of how the direction Ouija 2 goes in. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't help but go, it's almost the exact same thing. Which probably is not even, they probably had no idea, that the other movie was doing that, but it's so close that if you haven't seen that, you might enjoy this even more. But I think the aesthetic's really interesting. It's just bizarre when some of these movies, and it's one of the sad things about, as you know right now, Rob, the sad thing about movie distribution right now is just how it's like a fart in the wind sometimes. No one is talking about this movie. No, it's on no radars.
Who is doing the distribution?
I have no idea. Probably a Canadian. It might actually be IFC Midnight. Might have picked this up.
Oh, wow.
They might have picked it up. But I mean, if my friend hadn't, told me that his film came out, I would not know that this film existed.
I didn't know until I'd been in touch with Anthony. I didn't know until you told me.
Exactly.
Right
I knew he was shooting something. He never said why. I think he's got a new one on too. And again, this might have been more of a for hire. I don't know because it's a remake, not his original thing that he's been working on. Because I think that's still coming out. I saw that he's working on something right now. So
what's the name of this one? One more time.
This one's Our House. and it was a remake of it. But I think it's. I mean, this is a little bit more my speed maybe than Dead Night was, but they both have slight inconsistency in terms of like story stuff, like in character, But I kind of just like the world of this one more and found it intriguing. So and I really do think Anthony Scott Burns is going to do something really special in the genre because he has the elements are all there, just need the right story.
Yeah, it says he just wrapped on something called Come True.
So maybe it could be.
I got a couple from Severin to wrap us up on. One really, and then I don't know if anyone got the Changeling. I think Ryan did.
I did.
I got mine yesterday.
I may wait to talk about that until next week when we've all seen it.
I didn't get a copy, so I'm going to have to find one.
Yeah.
You can.
I never write to anyone and ask for free shipping.
Amazon's got great deals, Eric.
I know. I never asked for free
You can have
stuff.
my Changeling for a Doom Asylum.
Deal.
That is a fair
but
trade.
Ryan has to. Rob has to give it to you.
I will buy Doom Asylum.
I already gave mine away.
Turk's gonna get me a Doom Asylum.
I'm doubling down on Doom Asylum.
But anyway,
we'll talk about Changeling next week.
Well, we'll talk about next week, but the one I want to talk about is actually Combat Shock, which
Buddy G was
out. But I feel bad
That's
because
heavy.
here's the deal: so Severin did this great collector's edition of it. It was like a $40 set. It comes with a booklet. It comes with the soundtrack and all this great material. Limited to 2,000 pieces that you could only buy from them, and I'm pretty sure it's all sold out.
Wow.
So honestly, I don't know where you can get this. I would check Diabolic DVD, but it is blocked from the internet here at the Blumhouse office.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. It really
I
sucks
would check
because I
Severed Films, but it is also blocked.
I know.
Trauma is also blocked, guys.
It really sucks when I get that 5 minutes of time to buy some shit on Diabolic DVD, and then I'm like, IT departments, take down the filter.
No, when we were using when we were doing Blumhouse.com, I remember every single time Troma would send me a press release, it would block all the images that were coming from their site, and I'm like, I can't even read it.
But yeah, so this is from Buddy G. How did you say his name?
Giovinazzo.
Giovinazzo, and it's it's basically this super low budget movie about a Vietnam vet, and there's scenes that are in Vietnam, but it's also him in New York, and it's like that period of New York that just doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he believes it's the same world as Street Trash and all that, but a much bleaker version.
Very, very bleak.
Yeah.
This is not the sort of thing you put on a Friday night, although I think I did watch it on a Friday night. It's also a 4K scan of as it's referred to, the American Nightmares Director's Cut. I think that was his original title for it, and then I think it's Lloyd Kaufman who changed it to Combat Shock to sell it.
Yeah, it's
more.
the least trauma movie.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I also recall it, in addition to being very serious, heavy, and bleak, I recall it as being hyper gory as well. Is that?
Yeah, kind of, but it's more of. I think that's the thing is it's a really slow burn movie with a lot of weird, quirky characters in New York City. Like there's this gang and there's this guy that's like a drug addict that like the main character kind of like hangs out with. It's Buddy's brother who plays the character. But then it's this like last 20 minutes that are just so insane that's what makes the whole movie, and that is the gory bit and just like some really unbelievable shit. But it is it kind of falls in that Jacob's Ladder, like a low-fi like really disturbing Jacob's Ladder sort of deal. But what's cool about this disc is it's got so many features, but it's got a ton of Buddy's short films, including completely remastered Mr. Robbie Maniac 2.
What?
Which is, he did a 15-minute, I think it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah. But Joe Spinell really was personally hurt by all the women's groups like protesting Maniac. And so he really wanted to do Maniac 2. I almost said Cop. Maniac 2, where he'd play a character named Mr. Robbie, who, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, who was like a children's clown. And he loved children, and so he went after people like that, like were like pedophiles or did terrible. Basically, he wanted to make him this
character.
Joe Spinelli was trying to avenge it.
He was trying to make him an anti-hero, and so Lustig didn't want to do it, but he gave him his blessing. And they never got to do the feature, but he hired Buddy to do kind of this pitch, which was, I guess, the beginning of filming for the film. And they only made it, 15 minutes in. So that's here, including commentary from Buddy on it. Like they did. So there's like a couple shorts, but that's the main draw is like, oh, there's a restored version of Mr. Robbie Maniac 2.
Buddy's got a really good anthology part of the Theater Bazaar. It's my favorite of that whole
Which
film.
one's his?
It's the one that's set in Germany with the couple. It's very possession-like.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember asking Buddy about that, and he goes, yeah, that was his reference point. It's just a very clean, very different than this. It's very classy looking. Yeah. But I guess he ended up living in Germany making tons of TV movies.
Well, that's what he was saying.
Non-stop directing jobs.
Yeah, success there.
Cool guy, though. Really fun guy to talk
I think I know what you're thinking, Becca, when you said, isn't this really gory? I think you might be thinking of Thou Shall Not Kill Except. Where it's
possibly.
Like Sam Raimi playing a cult leader and then like some war vets or something like that. It's hyper violent.
I think I'm also merging it with August Underground in my brain.
Which is hyper violent and gory as well.
This one has a crazy baby thing, though, right?
There's a crazy baby thing.
I remember the crazy baby thing. Okay,
the
I'm
ending
merging
involves
a couple.
a baby thing that is just too much.
Sometimes I'm thinking about the movie Philadelphia, and I'm like, wait a minute, did that happen in August Underground or Philadelphia?
Or Cruising.
Pretty Woman. It was Pretty Woman.
Wow. Well, Combat Shock, it's sold out, but I think if you scour the internet, you may be able to find this, or maybe even...
Wait, so they're not going to release just a plain version?
No. It was a one-shot deal of 2,000 units. I don't know if that was a licensing thing or what the story was.
I have a really bad DVD of it.
Still through? I mean, obviously Severin licensed it, but prior to this, was it still part of Troma?
I mean, I think you could probably find the old Troma DVD of it, but it's not going to be what this release is. However, I mean, look, check. What Severin does almost all the conventions, so they may have a couple of copies wherever they're appearing next.
You know what is the craziest bullshit?
I got it in Arizona. That's how I got
good.
it. Yeah.
My daughter has a DVD of My Neighbor Totoro. It's a Troma release.
Ha!
I kid you not. My Neighbor, or I think it's pronounced Totoro.
It's
a Troma release. Yeah. I don't know how, but the DVD that we have is a Troma release.
Well, yeah, Shakespeare in Love is a Troma release. Did you know that?
What the fuck are you talking about, Kane?
Oh, no, that's Romeo and Juliet. Sorry.
Wow.
I knew it was close.
Slightly less penis monsters.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Anything else?
That is the
let's
indie
save Changeling for next week.
All right, cool.
Next
Changeling
week?
next week.
Changeling.
Let's bring it on.
Somebody give me some Doom Asylum.
All right.